religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another edition of Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jah, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be looking at a very big question: what should Liberians be looking for, or what should Liberians look for in selecting the next president? What are the things to look for when we are selecting presidents of Liberia? What it should be and what really it is. That's the reality. That's the question we're going to be grappling with tonight. With me to do this is Mr. Mansfield Duopu. He is our global affairs analyst. He's joining us from Minneapolis. Mr. Duopu, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, James. It's a pleasure to be here.
Also want to welcome my co-host here and also guest analyst, Raymond Oliver Hogarth. He is the voice you are familiar with on Radio Veritas and other radio stations in Monrovia. Mr. Hogarth, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. A pleasure.
I also want to welcome our governance consultant, Mr. Atman K. Salib, who's also joining us from Minneapolis. Mr. Salib, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. Let's do it as usual.
Joining us is our resident historian. This is Carl Famula. Carl is the presenter of the Liberia History Channel. She's also our public policy analyst right here on Focus on Liberia. Carl, welcome to the show. On mute, please.
It's always my pleasure to be back here.
Last and definitely not the least is this is his first time on Focus on Liberia. Adman Bashir Sharif, who is joining us from the nation's capital. Adman and myself go way back in Pennsylvania. Adman has gone to Liberia or relocated to Liberia, and this is the first time on Tough Talking Thursday and on Focus on Liberia. Mr. Sharif, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you.
Thank you for having me, Dennis.
By the way, since this is your first time on Focus on Liberia, I want to offer you a bottle of water to say welcome and feel at home.
Thank you.
On Tough Talking Thursday, we actually, as the name suggests, talk tough. And what we do is to discuss the issue like no other. Tonight, we're going to be discussing what to look for in the next president. In selecting the next president of Liberia, what should Liberians be looking for? That's the question. But another thing is what should be is different from what is the reality. So we can also delve into what really is the current situation. But before we delve into that, there are some current issues. We want to just talk about one. A week or two ago, our community was rocked by the fake documents or nursing degrees scandal, right? This story is growing wings, it's growing legs by the day. There are new developments almost every day. We are not going to go into the story to litigate it. It's in court. And at the end of the day, justice will be served, we believe. What I want us to look at before we start the show is the impact this case has had on a number of things. And that's where I want us to start with. Let me start with Mr. Adman Sirleaf, who is our governance guy, on the impact of this story. The story of a fellow Liberian plus others selling fake nursing diplomas and getting money, and they've been indicted for that. If convicted, the jail term is up to 20 years. What has been the impact of this case on our African immigrant community here, on nursing education and healthcare as a whole? What do you think?
Thank you, Dennis. I'm happy to be here again. You know, I like to lift up the discussions you had the other night, I think 2 nights ago, when you brought nurses and medical professionals on the show to on your on a segment to discuss. I think it was a special to discuss this issue, and what I gathered from there, they already encounter immigrant nurses, just like immigrant professionals in all fields, in different fields, are questioned often. Whether they are competent, whether they went to the right schools, got a proper training and education, and so forth and so on. And then now you have this in the mix. So what I gathered from that discussion was that they will even be questioned more. Their professionalism, their competence will be questioned more. Especially if you are from Liberia, and where some of the individuals who have been indicted under federal investigations are from. And people want to know, are you from Liberia? Did you go to nursing school here in the U.S. and what kind of school you went to? Those kinds of things. So on the one hand, on one level, you will have direct impact on professionals in the medical field and medical services and things like that. On another level, it's nurses who are, people who benefited supposedly now, who are working as nurses, right? Of course, their lifestyle changes and the families and impact. That's an issue that somebody said you brought it upon yourself. But patients and the public, people that those incompetent or people who didn't go to nursing school at all may be seeing, and facilities of which they're working. Some of these facilities may be sued. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I saw a lawsuit at some point where somebody looked back and realized there was some kind of suspected medical malpractice. Lord and behold, there were nurses who didn't actually go to nursing school and who attended to their relatives, and they will be, they'll sue. They could sue those facilities, and before you know it, we could see a cascading effect reverberating through the medical community, and through the immigrant communities by extension. So the many layers we could peel here, as you said, this is just an introduction, and so we're not really going to delve into this. But there are even political implications, I dare say, if not even some diplomatic implications as well.
And Mr. Sharif, let's talk about the political implications, because one of those who is being indicted was in politics. He's endorsing candidates or interviewing candidates, asking them the tough questions. So, and one thing that I've seen since this news broke up is if those involved, if they were tough on your candidate, then you try to be hard. If they are on the same political side, you try to be a little lenient. So in your view, what is the political implication? What impact is going to have on our politics?
Well, thank you for that question, Dennis. The political implication of this, in every analysis we make, especially on TV or on radio or whatever we do, we have to always be careful in what we tell other people. Because sometimes what we say, if we are also guilty of some of the things that we are accusing others of, sometimes it comes back to haunt us in a different way. Now, personally do not wish any evil on anybody, but sometimes people will go right after you, after they think you have been going after them in some ways. That is one side of it. But the other side is, why is this really happening? Why is this happening, especially in the Liberian community? This is directly something that happens somewhere in Florida with one particular school, maybe with 2 or 3 different branches. Now, what has that really done to people who went to that school? Is that stigmatization of those people. Now, what I'm hearing, there are institutions in the United States that are actually withdrawing the employment of those people because they are not sure if they actually graduated from a legitimate school. So some institutions are actually going ahead to fire those people. We can look at those that perpetrated whatever might have caused this, but we have to also look at those that are affected. I think that is really where the problem is. The general population that has been affected by this sad event.
And Cole, how do we talk about this, especially in the talk show world? One of those who's being indicted is a talk show host like myself. And so, and you have panelists. Just imagine, like, if I fall in trouble, and I think of one of our guests here on Focus on Liberia wrote a very nice article about how people should talk about it, like panelists on his own television. But it's hard. We are humans. If I fall in trouble here, I believe most of you, like me and like what we do here, and we are all connected. You may not be as robust talking about it like if it were happening to somebody else. So how do we discuss this kind of issue in the talk show world, or how do we report about them without being seen as either rejoicing or playing a blind eye to it? What is the impact on the whole idea of reporting the story and talking about it?
Sorry, I muted the mic. I mean, I don't think that it's difficult. You just tell the truth as you do about everything else. I think you're doing a very good job. You had some medical professionals on yesterday. It is important that it's presented factually, that the information that's presented is based on what is actually being released by the federal government, the prosecutors, and then also to tell if at all there's another side of the story, to equally present that as that information is revealed. I mean, based on my understanding, the federal government doesn't indict people on frivolous grounds. It's always they must have done a lot of research and they must have gathered a lot of evidence. I mean, they have like a 98 point something % prosecution rate, which means that the feds don't just go around indicting people willy-nilly. This is very serious. An indictment is not a conviction, but when it's a federal a federal indictment, it's usually very, very serious. So in such a case, that's how it should be reported, with that seriousness and with facts that are being released to the public. Talking about, oh, this person used to do this, so it's sweet for him. I mean, that's irresponsible. I don't think FOL has ever engaged in that. And I'm no longer on Facebook, where I used to get most of my Liberian news. So I don't really know how other people are addressing it. But I will say I do commend you, Dennis, for what you've been doing and what this platform has done since the occurrence.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Duopo here. Mr. Duopo, our justice system, right, and government, the way we do things in Liberia, it happens that there are a couple of few Liberians now that have been indicted by the United States. Look at the McGill issue and others, and now this one. So why is it that maybe only America is indicting people? What impact would this have on our justice system and the way we hold people accountable in Liberia? Were the people becoming to now put pressure on government? Hey, how come only America is catching people and you not? Anytime there's a corrupt case here, we don't see the end of it. And it is only when America sneezes, that's the only time we're catching the cold. So will this case impact how we hold corrupt officials and alleged criminals accountable in Liberia?
Well, I hope it does, because I'm sure you know that there are two different systems of justice: the American system and the Liberian system. Although our whole legal foundation is based on U.S. Jurisprudence. All our laws, our legal precepts all of those things, we emanated from the U.S. legal system. But it's just the execution of our laws that are very wanton, because we don't have the mechanism that the U.S. Government has in terms of actually, the whole notion of prosecution, like Cole said, it has to do with detailed investigation, research. You got to make sure somebody said the evidence is airtight. We talked about this, I think, a couple of shows ago. To bring those charges, those are not frivolous. No prosecutor goes around just bringing frivolous charges to a court. That's itself is a malpractice. You could be held in contempt by a judge, but for bringing frivolous lawsuit and just to besmirch somebody's character. So from a human level, I feel bad for people who are involved in this. Although there's a Liberian involved, we can't just hold the entire community hostage by one person's action. Is an allegation, is an indictment. There's still the presumption of innocence until they are proven guilty in the court of law. So we got to wait for that. Let the legal process take its course. Let us not rush into a judgment. And people, because I've seen on social media, the polarizing comments. Those who are against Mr. Witherspoon and those who are in favor of Mr. Witherspoon. It's so polarizing. It's so, tense on social media. I was just reading somebody, just posting that his properties have been seized. And, you see the Google map on his properties, a couple of properties around the U.S. And I was just telling somebody, in these kind of matters, prosecutors will go and put your properties that give they put in some escrow to make sure that you are not profiting from those earnings, So those are legal things that prosecutors do, to make sure the defendant is held in check, that he's not gaining from the proceeds of his properties while a criminal case is being pursued. So, but let us also juxtapose that with couple of Somalis in the Minneapolis area who, with other people, were indicted for stealing over $250 million of COVID money in Minneapolis here, federal money. So that should tell you the magnitude of these criminal activities. But let's not just look at the Stanton thing and just think that that's just the tip of an iceberg. People steal in America on a daily basis, credit card fraud and other fraudulent activities in billions and billions of dollars. And it would take the federal government, it would take all their lawyers, interagency, investigation. These things take time. It takes real effort, to gather the evidence, to adduce the evidence and bring it to a court and bring it to a secret body that would look at the evidence and say, yeah, you can bring this evidence to a court. So, from a human level, I feel bad for, whoever is involved. I know that people talk about the nurses and all that. They're also culpable in my view, because conspiracy has to do with two sides agreeing to conspire. So you find people who paid $15,000, $20,000 to get a diploma they didn't work for. That shows intent, So we can let those people off the hook too. Why it's true that the other people who provided those documents are the masterminds, but you also know that there are other people who benefited, who got jobs, who took state board. Some of them were so smart, they passed. They got good jobs. During the COVID time when nurses were in short supply, those people got bonuses, I'm sure, perks, and other, incentives to stay on the job or to get in the profession. So, we can discuss it from many angles, and I hope that, moving forward, we'll just look at the case and see how it progresses in court.
But do you think citizens would now begin to put pressure on government and say, hey, what's about our own criminals too? What's about those that are being corrupt? People are walking free, even people being indicted by LACC and other integrity institutions. Are we going to wake up to that someday?
Well, I mean, the system is there. It's just an implementation of. I mean, we don't have to tell government that you got to prosecute
If
people
they
who
don't
are
do it, can
alleged to
we?
have committed crimes, because the laws are on the books. It's just that we lack the political or judicial, willpower to effectuate our laws.
Thank
We're
you.
not lacking of laws. We're not lacking of statutes, in our criminal codes. Everything is there. It's a
Thank you.
complete replica of what is in the U.S. Criminal code. So we're
Thank
not
you.
lacking those laws. We just lack their political and judicial will to go after people who have been indicted, people who are found to be criminals and all that. So it's just a
Thank you.
societal issue, that we sweep most of these things under the table because of how our own socialization is kind of skewed.
Thank you. Mr. Hogarth, let me ask you, because you are a journalist and you report on these things. And what Mansfield referenced was there's a court paper that says the prosecutor is saying that if this man is guilty, his property 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 should be forfeited. But now it's being reported, people are saying, oh, the properties have been seized already. So that's the kind of reporting. But what you make of all this has to the impact, especially on Liberia, the way we report these things and the way we respond. And also about prayer, right? There's been a debate about people praying, their prayer cells. People are fast and prayer as to what happened. Liberia's, our community is very religious. So you think going forward, if we have these things, we're going to organize more fast and prayers and things like that so as to maybe exonerate or pray for the person or counsel? What do you think is going to be all that effect? Let's wrap it up.
Well, that is not to belabor the points delved into by each of the panelists. The only aspect I look from is that I feel sorry that a Liberian is involved. A renowned Liberian, I may say. Stanton is a young man who has come up, no matter how, but he has won the hearts of many Liberians. And to see him fall into this, even though it's an allegation so far, but to see that he's involved in this or he's alleged to be involved, it's a pity. I mean, that's from the humanistic point I'm looking at. I'm not looking at all the academics and all the legal ramifications. I mean, but just this Liberian guy I think he has been doing so well. You know that a lot of young people are employed, under his corporation, and but it's sad. That's the only way I look at it. I've been following all the events. I've been following the discussions on social media. I hear people being happy, and like you said, people praying. I mean, everybody has his friend, And Liberia is a small country, we say. We're all interrelated somehow. So no matter what, Stanton has done some good for other people back home. So people will be touched. And they'll offer prayers. Like we say we are a Christian nation.
Mm-hmm.
People will offer prayers for him. People will be castigating him on the other side. I mean that's life. But I really feel sorry for this man who has done so much, I think, in a short space of time, who has emboldened himself to the hearts of Liberians. A lot of people, even when you're listening to his programs, you hear people calling, "Oh, I want to talk to the CI looking for help," But I think it's a pity, and I hope he gets out of it.
And what's your feeling towards, probably victims in the situation, those who were maybe who actually did it or who were maybe lured or swindled in buying fake degrees, or those who might have been impacted by the actions of those people who were not qualified to work on patients?
That is quite understandable that there will be repercussions, perhaps negatively, following the impact of such an alarming hoax of granting people certificates and degrees or whatever. I mean, everybody will be affected somehow. The perpetrators of the act, the people who bought the degrees for you imagine $15,000 US. It didn't ring out to you that maybe there was something fishy about this diploma or degree I was going to get. I mean, it's so sad. It's so sad, especially I say with our Liberian being involved. It's so sad from that point of view. I mean, I can't see anything else.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday. And let's get to our topic for the day. What Liberians should be looking for in selecting the next president. Oh, and let me throw some things out there. Anytime we talk about selecting the president, what should Liberians be looking for? Is it the political party to say, well, I'm going back with this party and the ideology? Or is it the messaging that they should be looking for? Is it that the team that the presidential candidate built around himself or herself, is that what they're going to be looking for? Is it that, okay, this person has the track record of delivering? This person is went to school and has this degree. What should Liberians be looking for when it comes to selecting the next president of Liberia? Let me start with Mr. Duopu.
Well, in Liberia, from my own reading of Liberia politics, from my own understanding, I have not seen any deviation in terms of political ideology, between and amongst the political parties in Liberia. All the political parties in Liberia stand for the same thing. You read their manifesto or their, what they purport to stand for. You can see that clear, commonality of purpose. They believe in, say, the rule of law. They believe in unity and, yada, yada, yada. You can see a clear deviation in terms of what the political ideology is, So, Liberian political parties historically have never, actually been, driven by socialism per se, in other countries, that gained independence after maybe 1945, 1950, 1960, those countries that even Liberia even helped in making sure that they gained their independence from their colonial masters. Most of those countries, those parties that came to power had that socialist bent. So for in Liberia, we begrudge, we kind of, looked at that as, anti-democratic. The very people we helped in that process, when it turned to socialism, we said, well, we are purely pro-America and, a democratic society. Although we've always had a one-party political system, historically, the Truic party that ruled for more than 50 plus years. So we've not had really a multi-party democracy in that time frame.
So in your view, what should Liberians look for when you're selecting the president?
So, Liberians will always say they want a president who will be there for them, who will inspire them, who will be seen as a role model. So I don't know if we have reached that in our political thinking about that ideal president that the country have had. Because if you look at, Taylor, if you look at Elling, and now it's a mixed bag, that people who thought Elling was this astute political practitioner, but there are other people who thought, she was deficient in some ways. So even coming to there are a large segment of the Liberian population that looks at him as there's above human stature, because of his celebrity. They think that he is the savior. But there are other people who think, another swath of the population that believes that he's not up to the job. So, it's something that, theoreticians have to look at and see how, you can glean from that political consciousness as to what Liberians actually want in their leaders.
Right. I'm asking what they should want, but let me go to call. What should Liberians be looking for in selecting the next president come 2023 or October?
I mean, the president needs to, first of all, be knowledgeable about the country that they want to serve. They need to understand the context in which Liberia exists. They need to understand why the country was established, what the original vision was for the Constitution, for the country. They need to understand what it means to be an asylum, a freedom for African people. They need to understand these things. And they also need to understand the historical context that we exist in. To just correct one thing, Liberia has not always been ruled by the True Whig Party. The True Whig Party did rule for 102 years exactly, from January 1878 to April 1980 is when the True Whig Party left power. Before that, we had Republican presidents mostly. So the context that Liberia exists in, the history, all of that needs to advise policy and ideology for the president. It is around these concepts that leaders are typically able to rally and inspire their citizens to do better. Countries are not developed really from the top down. They may be inspired from the top down, but it's the citizens who are evoked into action through their leaders. And until there's a leader that's able to light that fire in Liberian people for them to stand up and live the way that they need to live and make the choices they need to make to carry their country forward, we're going to continue to fail. The bottom line is if we cannot light the fire under the citizens, for the citizens to actually change the country, it's not going to change. What I see is people thinking that they're supposed to sit down and let leaders do things for them. That is not the correct thinking in a democracy. When the people rule, the people have to be sparked into action. And so I don't see that leader. I don't see that leader. I haven't seen that person light even my fire before I say the fire of the masses. It's very easy to get me, excited about new concepts and new things, but the people who have come forth have been, put their hands up to run, have been a grave disappointment. It seems to be a contest of who is going to be the most competent. I'm not going to use the word coon, even though I said it. Who's going to be the most competent panderer for the West? So it's not even about exercising our self-determination as a country. It's a contest of who is going to be the best, puppet for America. And I'm a better candidate, America. Look at me. I'm more competent to be a puppet for you, United States. I mean, that's the kind of thing we're hearing coming from these leaders or these potential leaders. They're not really even talking to the Liberian people. They're pandering to the United States, hoping that they can get American support. It's disappointing. It's disturbing. And we're better than this. The country deserves better. The citizens deserve better.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Sharif. What to look for?
Well, first of all, I will begin by what is the function of the president, or what are the functions of the president? One of the things that comes to mind is the president signs or vetoes bills that are written by the legislature. 2, the president represents the country in talks with other countries. And number 3, the president also enforces the laws that are passed by the legislature. And the 4th that I could really pick up that is not the least is to act as commander-in-chief in times of war. Hopefully, we never get to that point again. But that comes to the question, what do we look for in the president or in presidential candidates, people who want to become president? The first thing that comes to mind is a candidate with strong vision for the country. The other one that comes to my mind is electability, likability. A president must be an effective communicator, courage to make unpopular decisions. Someone who has the ability to manage crisis, A president should have character and integrity. A president should be one, compassionate and have empathy. A president should also embody the direction of the future where the country should be moving. Another one is the president should also be charismatic, but above all, the president should be an experienced person. And, everybody comes to the table. There is always one way. In fact, in most cases, be it in the United States or in Liberia, as it has been over the years, second term presidents always come in with more experience than other presidents, than other candidates, because they have been there. And in this case, I think the only person there is George Weah. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Salif.
Thank you, Dennis. Um, as an academic matter, I think it's the guy. There's a famous book Joe McGinnis wrote about the Nixon 1968 presidency, selling of the president, because the Nixon was in sellable. He was in there. He was the kind of candidate who you had to really package, and as a result, it brought this kind of modern style of American political campaigning, of public relations and television ads and things like that. And McGinnis talks about four different characteristics or four factors that one should look at. And when I look at Liberian leaders or Liberian political aspirants, I start to look for some of these in our own context, and how can we localize some of these ideas that we learn and see from Western countries. Number one is to have political skills. McGinnis talks about that this person who presents themselves in a political context, who wants to be president, the people should look to this person to see that is this somebody who can read the context, the historical context, the political context, and understand the various actors and players? Is this someone who is able to forge deals on behalf of the people? Is this someone who has the mentor or the moral strength to even work with perceived political enemies or real political enemies for the good of the country when they get elected? I think the Dan Quill said of Bill Clinton in 1992 that, the way this guy is running, if he's able to govern as he's campaigning, he will make a good president. So the idea is you campaign differently. Somebody can campaign, they're very charismatic, they're on top of the message, but they don't make a good president, right? There's others like Jimmy Carter. He was underestimated. His campaign, he went to Iowa. I think he had 3 people, but he ended up becoming president. So you look for political skills. You look for management skills. You notice they didn't say leadership, they say management. Can this person focus enough to be able to form the right team, to identify individuals, citizens who can work with them to understand Liberia's problem, like I was saying, the context in which Liberia is right now? Is this somebody who has the ability to keep their eyes on everything, on multiple moving pieces? That symphony orchestra conductor that I talk about, someone who understands the music, understands different instruments, different players, and produce a massive, beautiful music that has harmony. So you look for that kind of person. That means sophistication, right? And then they talk about persuasiveness and negotiation skill. Can this person deliver a beautifully crafted speech? Really, like from a literal standpoint, can they speak to others who are non-Liberians and make the Liberian case, make Liberia's case, and negotiate both in the country with the legislature, with other branches of government, with different citizens groups, traditional leaders, chiefs, and so on, and international diplomatically? Does this person have this kind of skill set? And the final thing is temperament. Do they have that equanimity to be able to really withstand the pressure of the presidency, to understand the office of president, and what is it that you do with this office, for what purpose? For the good of the Liberian people. Do you bring this appreciation? Do you bring this kind of sophistication and understanding? Or are you in it just for your own personal aggrandizement, for your friends and your region or your tribal people. I think if the Liberian people are really looking at issues and looking at the kind of complexity of what to look for in somebody who can deliver for them, are the kinds of things they should be looking for.
Thank you. And Oliver, I know you have questions too, but let me ask, especially Call and starting with Call and Admin is all those things that you listed for Call is somebody who understands the historical context, what Liberia stands for, and all. So how do you look for this person? What is it? I'm a voter, and Chevy went through a list. I can imagine that book is even big. So if I'm a voter in Bannersville, Ophi, how do I look for that person? Let me start with you, Carl.
So usually in most democratic settings, you have political parties who have members and they field candidates based on their principles, based on some ideology and some vision that they have, some big future picture that they have painted for the republic and where it should be going, based on shared values and all of these wonderful things we like to talk about. The issue is that we have all of these political parties, and really they're always built around personality and not ideology. They're always built around some individual and not some goal, not some common goal. It's like this, the goal ends up being this person for president. So we have a lot of sycophancy, hero worship, and all of these things going on. So the citizens, the general body of citizens are confused because those who have put on the hat of politicians and political pundits have terribly failed in their role, not only to enlighten and educate, but to create ideology and rally people around that. They are extremely simplistic in their approach to politics. When you talk to people about Liberian politics, it's, oh, this is Liberia. I mean, they act as if Liberia is some kind of an asylum for degenerates that don't think. And so they have absolutely no respect for the people that they want to lead. They have absolutely no respect for the country, because if they did, they would have more to offer, these political parties would, besides my guy for president. I mean, it's pathetic. And if something happens to your guy, then the party disintegrates into nothing, into chaos and confusion, as with Liberty Party, because there is nothing really holding them together except an individual. And this is the case time and time again. This has not been the case historically, contrary to what most people believe. I think something terrible that happened to Liberian politics was when we created our very first dictator, which was Tubman. A lot of the principled and ideological battles that were happening in the country stopped. They were stalled, they were suppressed. And after that time, we didn't have a whole lot of time after Tubman before we dove into chaos. So we need to get back on track. I always say, when you want to know where you went wrong, you go back to the fork in the road and see where you made the wrong turn, and you correct it from there. This is why history and context is important. Liberia has not always been ridiculous, contrary to what a lot of people believe. We have had some wonderful leaders who have done some great things, some courageous things. We exist today because we have had some very good presidents. One time, Dennis, you asked on the show, I think of either Cummings or one of the candidates, you asked him who was his favorite president. And I'm paraphrasing because I didn't memorize his answer, but it was something to the effect of, he could only mention presidents that existed in his lifetime, and he said that his favorite president was Culver. And, which is fine, that's his favorite president. But I thought to myself, my God, I don't think this guy knows anybody before Tubman, because most of us as a country, we don't. So we don't even have a hero to emulate, because the country, there's absolute ignorance surrounding what happened before Tubman. And that's unfortunate. So to get off my soapbox, the issue really is, I put the fault on the political parties. They're the source of the confusion. They're the source of the bad politicians. The political parties, all of them, are responsible for Liberia being where it is today, because it's political parties that have the responsibility to be the torchbearers of the vision for the country.
Thank you. Mr. Sharif, let me start with you before I go to Ahmed. You talk about, I think the last point you hit there is experience. So how do we go about, as a voter, finding people who have those characteristics that you listed earlier?
Well, the idea of what you look for in a president is perceptive. What you may think is something that you are looking for is not what Joe Blow or Mary Brown may be looking for. So everything is really perceptive, what people think, what the individuals think. And sometimes you will see that even though you raise a son, you send him to school, you thought you were very close to your son, but he has a different political mindset from you. And sometimes in your own lifetime, you will get to realize that his politics is different from yours. So it's really strictly perception, what people think or what the individual thinks. But I think everything is really bordering around some of the things that I was just listening to you. Uh, the president must have vision. What are you going to do with this country? Where do you hope to head with this nation that you want to lead? Uh, but in the midst of all of those visions and plans and things that you may have in mind that you want to carry this country, the electorate must also like you. So even if they like you, are you also electable? Because some people like them, but they are not electable. That's just the way it is. How well are you able to communicate your message? A lot of times in Liberia, people think just because you go out there and talk, and but effective communication. Up to the time of JFK in America, for example, JFK was the best communicator. Then came a man called Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton became the best political communicator. And somewhere in 2008, Barack Obama came. And he took that record, and he still holds that record as the best political communicator. But what is it that you are able to tell people that they are looking for? And it's never something that you and I can really define, because you never know what the common man is really looking for. But all of the things that I'm listing in there, compassion, showing empathy for people, being charismatic, those are all just perks that people also look at, how well this man or this woman is able to relate to the general population. I think those are the things that people actually look at. And of course, they want to look at, your experience, because people always want to see what have you done in your past life. Now, what you have done in your past life, I think will give a better idea to people or to the electorate to see as to where they really want to go with you. But the
And Mr.
idea
Sharif,
of that
how
people
does the voter go about vetting this kind of thing? How does the voter go about trying to make sure that candidate A, B, or C has those things that you were talking about?
well,
We don't have debates with political parties as according to law.
you
We
can
not
have.
really articulate.
There are two things you cannot change a man's mind on, and that is their politics and their religion. People are stuck on those two things. And sometimes you can convert a man, but that rate is actually low. And in politics, also, what people believe, what they believe. So it's not so easy that you can easily sway them from what they really believe. And there are people somewhere in the middle, you call them independents, who are not really leaning on any side. Sometimes they are able to look at what this person is offering and then support that candidate based on what they are offering. But it is as far as really choosing a candidate is really perceptive, and you never know what the voters are looking for.
Admit, what is the process?
Thank you, Dennis. Well, you can be theoretical, but like Mr. Sheriff and Co, I think referencing here in our context, it's personality politics. no institutionalism. I keep talking about that. All these political parties are not institutions. They sort of galvanize around a personality, an individual, a demagogue of sort. As a result, if you went to Camp Western political campaign training, they talk to you about sins and sinners, right? Sins and sinners are the sins are those who will vote for you no matter what. Somebody can say they may dying today, man. They said I'm a candidate, right? And and that's the sin for you. The sinners are the ones who would never vote for you. I don't care what you do. You can be the best candidate. They present you. Nobody's going to vote for you. That's and this is very characteristics of how Liberian politics, the narrative that come out of Liberian politics that we hear. On the other hand, even in advanced democracy, what you see, democracy is what you see in this political science literature and political books or even just modern campaigning experts talk about and write about. That they say that a candidate is looked at sort of from either or perspective. This person is either an elitist or they're for the people. This person is either good or they're bad. This person is either sophisticated, they're smart, they understand the issue, or they're not. They are a partisan of this party or now or of this. As a result, they just hold them in that respect. So for our context, people, because there's no institutionalism to really groom and educate political stalwarts and voters, people, although brand border issues are there, the economy is struggling, the country is struggling, things are not looking good. If you're in the CDC government, you say everything is good, right? Everything is good, and they have the best inflation rate in the world and things like that. But when you talk to family and friends in Liberia, they say, look, we don't have food. We need food. Basic things. They can't go on the farm. They can't go to the market. They can't send their kids to school and on things like that. Those are the brand border issues that border around the social contract between the voters, the citizens, and the elected officials and people who are aspiring to be elected. Granted, when you come down to it, though, people go beyond that. Oh, they say, y'all leave us, that this person we want. That's the slogan they carry around. You'll leave us that this person want. What
and we'll come to the current reality.
Exactly. That's the reality. So how do you ask that voter, what is it that you're looking for? They say, leave us that where we want. Leave us that Baka we want. Leave us that Cummings we want. So they are on a sinner and sins sort of binary right there.
Mr. Duopu, you didn't really tell me what voters should look for. You are saying, from what I heard you say, is this is chaos and people are not going to look for anything.
Yeah, but that's the dichotomy between what is and what ought to be.
So in your mind, what ought to be? That's what I was asking.
You are really, to the what ought to be. I'm telling what is. I'm
asking what ought to be. We come to the what is. I was asking what ought to be. So
and the what ought to be is purely aspirational.
Exactly.
What voter want in their president. Mm-hmm. You can't have two voters put in a box that will want the same thing for their president. Right. You might have very.
So my question for you is, as we go towards 2023, what is it that going to tell the balance? What is it that voters going to go for?
Most of the time, people gravitate to people, like somebody just said, our politics is centered around this whole notion of cultism, personality cult. It's not driven by ideology, like I said initially. Our political parties are not really driven by ideology. They are driven by, somebody who comes today who has a little money, who becomes the political leader of that group. And after that person fades away, that group, naturally dies. So until our political socialization comes to that pinnacle where we can vet these things based on ideology, based on what the person stands for and all that, until we reach that, it will be hard to say what does a voter want, or how we put two voters here and say, what do you guys want in a leader? So people will give you different reasons why they gravitate towards a person. Maybe that person is seen in a light. That person is corruption free. That person, comes with managerial skill. That person is a celebrity. So there are different, things that are driving the voters. So to gauge a particular thing, it will be hard, So we can only make conjecture and say, people are gravitating to X because they see him in a different light, So we can stare all day and talk about what we want to see, what voter we want to see in a leader, and we won't reach that conclusion. So the what is different from what ought to be. So I'm looking at the what is.
And you don't know what ought to be.
No, I'm just being practical. What is driving people right now?
Thank you.
Those are some of the things that they talk about.
And Mr. Oliver Hogarth, before we come to what really is the current situation, let me see if you have any question for our panelists.
Oh yes, I may have one for all of them. I listened to all of you, and everybody has brilliant ideas, qualities of presidential, the kind of president we want. I think we want somebody, who has the country at heart, who loves Liberia, who has integrity, who is able to rally the people under one voice to achieve goals, all of that. But I think one point we shouldn't forget is the electorate. We shouldn't forget those people who will go to the polls and cast their ballots. And for our country, Liberia, looking at it holistically, we can't ignore the illiteracy rate in our country. I don't care what kind of good leader you have or how the people can project their leader. If our people are not knowledgeable enough, conscientized enough to know how to vote, who to vote for, know that you have that power to employ, because those people, I always say, they are looking for jobs. So they become your employees, you the employer. But what should you be looking for? That's where I come into the civil society organizations, the media, and people like you, a clean panelist sitting here. I listened to Cisco. I mean, I think she was brilliant. How do we get to our people? Our people in a back bush, our people who haven't gone to school. Those are the people who are most vulnerable by those politicians who carry their hand, because the political parties, people, I know for sure, political parties are in the hand grips of those politicians. They put the documents in a hand grip and ask the political party go in there. So how do we get to those people in the nooks and crannies of our country to educate them? Somebody can come and give you 10 cups of rice and they give you $15, vote for me. And that's all. After you finish eating the 10 cups of rice and the $15 and you put that person in office, they do nothing for you. So I think we should concentrate on how to educate and conscientize our people on how to vote and who to vote for. That is very, very important. If not, anything goes.
Thank you. That brings us to the question of what Mr. Duopo loved to talk about is the reality. What is the current situation and where do we feel the voters are? And let me lay out some things there for you, right? Because the current situation now, when it comes to those running for president, there has been a discussion around the Unity Party's Joseph Newman Boaka, his health and his age. We have seen MRD, Prince White Johnson, and the CDC, their agreement, they are going back and forth. Today, he's even saying there are assassination attempts on his life because he is not bowing to the pressure of the CDC government to be able to sign the agreement to say, yes, let's do it together. We also see the current reality with the NPP, VP Joe Howard Taylor, and the CDC, because the NPP and CDC were in a coalition, and there has been some fallout and putting it back together. We also see that Mr. Alexander Cummings is very tight-lipped on his possible running mates. We don't hear anything coming out. If you look at Councillor Tiawan Gonglo, I mean, where is he now? Is he making headways? Is he kind of making some inroads when it comes to the voters? Is he resonating with the people? And there's been a new candidate. That is the son of the late Vice President Harry Fumba Moniba. So putting this all together, and let me start with you, Mr. Duopu. That's your favorite area. What is the current reality? Where are the voters?
Well, the voters, it's a confusing political melee that's going on in Liberia right now. Like you've clearly articulated all the infightings, the juxtapose, the subterfuge and everything that's happening in and amongst political parties. You talked about let's look at the NPP, the internal wrangling. You found out that, a couple of weeks ago, some executives of the NPP kind of ousted Madam Joa Howard Taylor on grounds that she has served two terms of being standard bearer. So there was calls by some people in the party hierarchy that they need a new standard bearer because they are in a coalition with the CDC. So that whole arrangement kind of, almost came to an abyss until I think George Weah made a visit there, and I don't know how they patched that thing. And you come to the Cummings reality. You talked about, him not presenting a vice presidential candidate. You talk about Minister Bwaka's health and the calls for him to, step aside for a younger person to come, So it's the whole political gamesmanship that is going on right now. It just accentuates where we are as we move towards elections. There will be all these like the Prince Johnson, his whole mantra, trying to assert himself, trying to be a bigger player in the elections, because he always kind of positions himself as a kingmaker, and so all you'll find out that you all those things going to happen as we move towards election, and the voters themselves are kind of confused because they really don't know, where things are right now because of all the confusion in the political parties. And political parties should be doing a better job of really articulating their positions on all these different policy issues to make sure they can at least kind of channel the aspiration of their supporters, behind them. Right now, what we see is a big confusion in the body politic.
So, Mr. Duopu, does this confusion favor any particular candidate, in your view?
Well, I think incumbency has its own power. The power, the bullet puppet. George Weah, he has this 38% of the population. In 2 elections. I don't know if the other political parties, what their percentages are. So they have a lot of work to do. But for him, he's the incumbent. He has his structure in place. Right now, I think Saturday there will be this big endorsement. I don't know what that is for. I don't know if it is this campaign and all that have started in earnest. But we see all these, different political gamesmanship in the opposition parties. I hope they can just kind of put their act together and challenge Mr. Weah.
Mr. Salif, same question. The current situation. Let's discuss the current situation.
Well,
where are the voters when it comes to what we see today?
Everything Mr. Duopu has described, that's what should be happening in an election year in any country. There are these political machinations, they're positioning, aligning, alignment, alliances, realignment, jockeying, people trying to have strategic alliances so that, they can be in the good graces of whoever wins or whoever they believe they should support now because such a individual will win eventually. That's what we're seeing happening. Um, where are things now? What year was it when Buhari was running for the first time since he ran as a civilian? And I believe that Goodluck Jonathan was also running for re-election. And a Nigerian friend said to me, we have a bad situation in Nigeria. And that's what is it? He said, we have a bad field. The people don't want Buhari. The people don't want Goodluck Jonathan. Yet the people have to elect a president. And so he said, this is the dilemma we have. And I believe we have a similar situation here.
The prisoner's dilemma.
Exactly. So you can analyze each of the candidates, and each of them has a almost insurmountable baggage, right? And so they say that political campaigns reward fighters. So that's what's happening now. Those who are fighting, and the fighting include trying to be in alliances, strategically based on region, based on who has the right perception of winning, because politics is also about perception. Who comes from which region that's vote rich and therefore will bring the numbers with them. That's what we see happening. Meanwhile, the voters are sort of like collateral damage here in the midst of it all. They're just watching. Yeah, one thing Mr. Hogarth talked about really earlier, it was very important because a lot of our people in the Leeward counties, they need education, not just education. Sometimes the people don't read. So you have to show them these political symbols, try to explain to them what the elections are about, when will the election take place. Of course, you can say, oh, election commissions, civic education, political parties, and civil society groups, that's your role. But at the same time, the citizens are not just in a vacuum. They're all in a mix of all of these political machinations that are happening and positioning and repositioning that are happening right now. That's really what's happening. I mean, when you look at Mr. Cummings, his people, his diehard, his saints, I talk about saints and sinners, his people who support him no matter what, say this is the right candidate. This is who we believe can lead Liberia, who has vision. You look at Baka, they say Baka is the only formidable opposition candidate to defeat George Weah. He has the number, he has the elderly statement, he's respected, and all of that kinds of things. Well, the detractors will say, look at the man's health, look at his age, and see how he moves, the energy, and things like that. Or what new vision does he have, can he bring to the table? You go to George Weah, they say, given what he has done over these 6 years, this is the voters intend to purchase. Do they want to purchase him back? Are their lives better now than they were 6 years ago? That's the fundamental question that he has to answer. So all the candidates have their butts and have their strength. Gonglo's people will tell you, look, Gonglo is the alternative here. Well, you analyze the situation, and people say you don't see the traction, you don't see the following, it's a large national appeal. Maybe he will get there, but it's not there yet. Clarence just announced, so he's barely known a commodity on the political. Yes, he's serving President Salif administration. People know him at that level. But what does he have? What does he bring to the table this late in the game? So all of them are problematic, Dennis.
So in the midst of this or the problematic situation that you just described, do you think this situation favor any one candidate? Mr. Duopo talked about the incumbency.
Yes, look, incumbency in any country, any society, any election, it has a slimmer of advantage. But incumbency too has its own disadvantages. Because, of course, you have to think now, incumbency is what the people know. They say, well, these are the people who have been governing. You see how we have been. Have we been living well? Is the country's future promising? What kind of vision they came and talked about change for hope? What was the hope? I mean, was it realized? These are the kinds of questions the incumbents have to answer. The incumbent, the only in our African politics is because the power of the purse and the bullet pulpit, right? So they can they can do whatever state resources, I mean, and get away with it in our context. I believe that is the advantage. In terms of electability and, that they can win and based on the record, I don't know. It might have to be an election, a win because there's no other formidable alternative. That's based on what we're reading. Really, that's why it could boil down to. So yes, there's an advantage there, but also it's really up for grabs right now, Dennis.
Thank you. Call the current situation. Where are we with, and where are the voters?
So, because we have more elected officials than just the president is the physical embodiment of the state. Is the state personified in a person, and that person is kept in check, in line by the legislature. Liberians are making equally poor choices when they're selecting lawmakers. And this is dangerous because if we were to have a president who isn't competent or who is a criminal or who violates the Constitution, it is the legislature that's supposed to impeach this person. And so the most dangerous thing that we're doing as a democracy is sending people to represent our interests who are not capable of doing so. And we're doing this across the board, across the country. So it makes the presidency even more volatile, more dangerous, because we do not have a functioning system of checks and balances because we keep electing incompetent people who cannot hold presidents accountable. And right now, it's even more frightening because if you look at the composition of the House and the Senate, you realize that if we're not extremely careful about who we send to the mansion or who we send to be citizen one, yet again, that person is almost going to be unchecked with absolute power. All of the presidents in the past that have been impeached, forced to resign, and even murdered, God forbid it happen again. But those who have been legitimately and constitutionally removed in the past, that was a system that was functioning. That was a system in where the people who elected representatives were able to fulfill their constitutional mandate and keep the powers that be in check and make sure that they're working for the benefit of the citizens. This no longer happens. We have three candidates that I think are most prominent. All of them have, for me, some very serious red flags. Suppose we get president in there, or Weah remains there, and he says, it's my second term. My boys and I mean, he's got people close to him that have been sanctioned by the U.S. We've been accusing them of all kinds of things. Whether true or not, if he gets in the second term and he decides he's going to loot the country, there's nobody that's going to keep him in check. I've not once seen the legislature call any of these people into chambers to question them about misconduct. Then we have a Supreme Court that is completely mute. They're more worried and concerned about getting paid on time than performing their constitutional duties. It is frightening for the Liberian people. So when elections come, I hope that they understand that even if they've been given these poor choices for presidential candidates, they can also empower themselves by sending people to represent their interests correctly. That is probably more important as we stand right now, 2023, facing this election, who they're going to choose for Senate and who they're going to choose in the House for those whose terms are expiring this year. It is extremely important that Liberians pick people who are not only competent and understand that they're not there to enrich themselves and fill their pockets and give them rice and shabby bridges, but people who are going to function the way the Constitution is designed for them to function. People talk about decentralization all the time. We are already decentralized. Decentralization of services is supposed to be done by those we send to the Capitol. They're supposed to be the ones that make sure that the budget is distributed equitably among those who are their constituents. So if you're in Riverside and you elect a senator and a representative and you're not getting the services you need, it's not because the country is not decentralized. It's because the people you're sending to make sure that the budgetary allocations reach you don't know their job and they're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're busy overpaying themselves. They're busy overpaying themselves and worrying about themselves. So you already have local representation. This is what everyone has always been crying for. It exists. But you are sending incompetent people to represent you. That is the problem. And we will not even be talking about many of these things we're talking about. If Weah was afraid of the legislature, as he should be, as the US president is afraid of the US legislature, he would keep himself in line. Every single president should be afraid of the legislature. They should know that they're impeachable. That's all I have to say about that.
Dennis, if I may comment.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to get the call. Listening to you, Cole, I mean, this is exactly, these are the things that we need to do as a people. Now, from where you sit and listening to all that you said, how do you think, Liberians, how can we ensure that, because I know for a fact our legislature is the worst branch of government. If they were doing the checks and balances that they're supposed to be doing and holding the executive feet to the fire, we wouldn't have a lot of these problems that we're faced with. So how can we, some people like you, Mr. Salif, Mr. Sharif, Mansfield, how can we ensure that come the elections time, we'll be able to, educate our people and conscientize them enough to know what to do to get those crooks out of the legislature, to put in people who will be able to think of Liberia first and the people that they represent. How can we do that?
Was that addressed to me alone or anyone on the panel?
Any of the panelists, all of you, Duapu, Mr. Sharif, the Salif, and you, Koba. I want to begin with ladies first.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's education. It's education. I would have liked to see the opposition when they formed the CPP. I would have liked to see them take their energy and their resources toward a mass education campaign, civil education campaign. I would have liked to see them carry that out to the types of candidates that they selected. I think at this point, we still have some time, but we wasted a lot of time, a valuable time. And the opposition keeps fielding bad candidates to the legislature as well, just like the ruling party. There's very little difference in the way that they function and think in the things that they believe in. So I don't even see the point. But to answer your question, radio education, getting into the schools, information dissemination, I think it is our civic responsibility. Some of the reason we even have this platform, FOL, is to be able to educate. I think Dennis is doing a tremendous job. Dennis is doing what Liberia Broadcasting System should be doing. There should be LBS. This should be functioning the way that FOL functions. And if people mean well, these people that are funneling all this money into politics in Liberia, if they meant well, they would take a platform like FOL that is there trying to bring information and enlighten Liberian people, and they would push this forward so that it can reach the people it needs to reach. So it's not that people are not doing it. It's that the people who have the resources to advance the cause of civic education would rather spend the money bribing politicians or doing other, horrible things that are not productive for the democracy.
So you think political parties should play a more progressive role?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me go to Ahmed now. Ahmed, I'm saving you for last on the question of the current situation because you are right there on the ground. We talk about the incumbency factor. I want to play a video where it looks like the president or the CDC has started to run the campaign already. People are complaining that almost every LiPo has the picture of the president for campaign 2023. Take a look. Mr. Sharif, where are the voters?
Where are the voters? Ceteris paribus, holding all variables constant where we are today. If elections were held today, I can tell you President George Weah will be re-elected as president of Liberia. Why will I say that? Sometimes when you are in a different society, you don't see everything that is happening in the country, but there are some striking, changes, developments that has actually taken place in the country over the last 5 years that I have been here. I moved here in 2018. Most of Monrovia did not really have electricity. I remember I went to quite a few meetings and I was always advocating what happened to Central Monrovia. Let's do something for Central Monrovia. But it's like the city was definitely moved to Cinco. Everything is now in Cinco. Cinco is the new Central Monrovia. Uh, what are some of the things that has really changed? Number one, electricity. The electricity in the country has really improved to a great extent. Now, I grew up in Monrovia. From the time you leave the Bummy Highway or the Cape Mall, you enter Monrovia from Douala. I mean, you begin to see, burning lights throughout Monrovia until wherever you're going, Pinsville, RRA. That's how it was. Well, that is slowly becoming a reality, whereas you can actually enjoy an uninterrupted electricity in Monrovia today. In fact, I have been making visits in the county, Cape Mount, my county. Uh, there is now electricity all on the road in Cape Mount. When you're driving on the highway, there are street lights that are just on at night. Now, there are also improvement in some of the road conditions. When the people of Bapolo, for example, can now boast for a modern hospital for the first time in their life, I think that is very applaudable. It doesn't mean that because Bapolo is somewhere in the forest that the people there cannot have a modern hospital. Somebody asked a question one day, but it is inaccessible. But what happened to the people that are there? There are people that actually live in those places. So what is wrong with them having a modern hospital? Just as there is nothing wrong with the modern hospital that was built in Tapeta many years ago, because the people in that area actually had access to those hospitals. The road in Bapolu today has improved a whole lot. It's not paved, but it's very, very drivable. It's pliable. Cars can go there. You can go there with almost any car. Tapeta, let's go to Nimba County. If you go to Nimba County today, a lot of roads were built and, in fact, paved in Nimba County. And the same thing when you go to the southeast. A lot of those improvement has taken place over the years. It is not 100%. There are still some work to be done. But if the people in the country are actually looking at these little deliverables that they see what they are actually seeing with their own eyes in the last 5 years, I think those are the things that they are going to actually make their decision on. Mr. Mansfield Dopo said something earlier about the incumbency factor. About yes, it's true. In every election, President Weah has always won the first 38% or anywhere in the 30s. Uh, but Liberia, like the United States or any other country out there, no one political party has an overwhelming majority. In America, for example, you have the Democrat and the Republicans. But if you're looking at the base of each of those parties, I think the Republican base is about 32% and the Democrats are about 38%. The rest of the people are all in the middle. That's what you call the independents. So, in order to actually win an election in that country, also in America, you have to attract the independents. And you have those kinds of people here also. So what is going to happen? A lot of these political parties are going to come together, if not in the first round, but at least in the second round, to ensure that one of these parties win. And based on what I see today and what is happening and all the talk and all the things that are happening in the country, I think CDC is in a better chance to win the elections if they are held today.
So, and that prediction is based on the development, as you said.
Yes, I mean
And you
you
think
have
the
to.
people are responding to development more than maybe pocketbook issues, etc.?
Dennis, pocketbook issues are there. Pocketbook issues are everywhere. But if you're looking at the economic crisis around the world and what has happened in Liberia also, it's not different in any like as it is in any other country. For a very long time, Liberia has enjoyed gasoline price at what $3 and change. When I came here, it was $3, I believe, and 25 cents. Today is around $5. But if you look at what they are charging for gasoline or fuel in the sub-region or in other countries in West Africa, Liberia is by far better. In fact, Liberia is one of 3 or 4 countries around the world that still sell gasoline or fuel by gallon.
And how
Every
does
other
it compare with the take-home pay? How many people or employment rate? Because people should be working to be able to buy the gasoline, right? So comparing that to the sub-region, what is the unemployment rate?
The unemployment rate around the sub-region and just like in Liberia also is not any better than what it is here.
Okay.
The unemployment rate in Liberia has not gotten any worse than it was years ago. No, it's basically all on par as it has been. The
Thank you.
problem or what has happened in Liberia since the war of 1990, Liberia had an enclave economy where everything was not central in Monrovia. You had Nimba County, for example. People who lived in Nimba, in Yakipa, and other places did not have to come to Monrovia. You also had people who live in Grand Bassa, for example, Buchanan. People that live in Grand Bassa, Buchanan, did not even have to come to Monrovia because they could do everything there. They had their supermarket, they had their money. When they came here, maybe they would fly and go someplace else, or they came here to buy different things. You go to Kidma, NIOC was there. Then you go to Bum Hill, they also had LMC. So there was a lot of things that got people employed in Liberia. But as time went on, everything has dissipated. This is not specifically or particularly the fault of any particular person or government. I believe NIOC closed because they could no longer manage the mines. And subsequently, there was something that took place in Cape Town called the landslide. I believe it was in 1984. And after that, that company also could not sustain their operations in Liberia anymore. Then came the war, of course, Lamco and bomb mines, they all left. But what I'm trying to say, the level of employment that you have prior to the war is not what it has been. And it hasn't been like that under any other government. What this government did when they took power in 2018, there were people who actually were on what you call stipends, who were actually government employees, but who were on stipend, who did not receive salary. So what they did, they brought all of those people and put them on one salary, because you had a secretary in one ministry that was making
a harmonization.
Yes, that
All
you
right.
had a secretary that was
That
making
is-
$1,200, and then you had a secretary in another ministry that was making $300. So how do you bring all of those people to make sure that if you are a secretary and you have a BSc, this is what you make? Yes, of course, those are not popular decisions, but those are bold decisions that a leader must make.
Thank you.
But if you look at it, a lot of people were actually put to work over the last 5 years than there was before.
Thank you. Mr. Drupo, you agree with that assessment before call company?
I think so, you know, and the fact that he's on the grounds and he sees everything that's happening gives him a vintage, you know, pitch. But I would say that, you know, what he just talked about, the economy and livelihood of the people, even under Madam Salif actually benefited from the money that, you know, All Mill, you know, and the other international organizations pumped in during her administration. So most of the money that was floating around and the government had in terms of foreign exchange and all that, those were foreign monies. So when those the UNMIL left and the UN system kind of left and all that, that money dried up. So you can't, that money is not going to come back again. So the country itself has to actually look within to make sure that it can generate some income from taxes, from the concessions and all that. And maybe the World Bank can help them with their payroll. So, you know, I mean, the situation is dire. Nobody should kind of just dismiss that the reality the people are living under. I mean, it's just symptomatic of the sub-region itself. You go to Sierra Leone, Guinea, Nigeria, you know, dire economic times. You know, so I mean, we just have to make sure that our country, you know, with all the wealth, the natural resources that we have, we can harness all that for the betterment of our country. And we need good financial managers. We need people in public policy that can really channel, I mean, those things for the public good.
You don't think we have them now? Those good planners and policy makers?
Well, I mean, the situation is that, you know, most of the people around Mr. Weir are people that he brought from his political base. And I've said it on this show and many other shows that I think it's about hard time that he goes beyond his political base. Like Ahmed talked about, a good leader. I mean, real or perceived enemies, try to make some overtures, try to reach out, making sure you bring the best minds, you know, in terms of governance, in terms of our economic management. There are a lot of brilliant people within the country and outside the country that he could tap, you know, bring them to help the country, because it is about the country. It's not about a political party or an individual, what have you. It's about the country's future. So I'm sure this election will be kind of watershed. It will kind of really, you know, set things, kind of concretize things if we are making progress in the next, in the future, or we are going to digress. So, I mean, the ruling party has a work cut out, just as the opposition. You know, somebody are talking about the issue between Bwaka and Cummings coming together, because Weir has that 38% kind of in his bag per se. But then the bad blood that has kind of germinated between the two individuals. I don't know if they can work out a political a deal that either Bwaka heads the ticket or Cummings. I don't know, but the bad blood from the CPP culminating into all these the news about Bwaka's age, the news about Cummings not coming, when Bwaka is in, political peril, and Bwaka not kind of reciprocating when Cummings is in political peril and all that. So it doesn't bode well for a strong opposition presence. So I hope, because for our democracy to be strong and vibrant, we need a strong opposition parties. We need strong civil society organizations that can hold the president feet to the fire. Not just the legislature, like Cole kind of, stated, though they have a big role to play. Opposition parties, civil society organizations have also very important role in the whole governance architecture.
Thank you. Carl, you wanted to make some...
Yeah, just some observations here. First of all, we have to understand that buildings are not schools, buildings are not hospitals. We're focused on the perception or the pretense of development. We build these hollow buildings and we don't develop the human beings to manage them. Hospitals are actually people. They're actually the technocrats. They're actually the doctors, the nurses who are trained to heal people, and the equipment and the building and the surroundings are really there just to support the human beings that have been developed to administer healthcare. So putting a huge building in the forest where there is no one trained to be a doctor or a nurse is a problem. It is a problem to build these giant concrete schools where we do not have a modern curriculum. We have not overhauled the educational curriculum in I don't know how many decades. We do not have the time, the government has not focused on developing the human capital necessary to teach students in a modern manner and to bring Liberian students to the 21st century as far as the type of education system that we need to be able to survive and move into the future. And then this idea that, giving people these welfare do-nothing positions and calling it jobs when they have nothing to do, and then putting the burden on taxpayers to pay them is not an accomplishment. The government is too big already. There's too many employees. There's too many civil servants, and not even enough work for them to do. You go into any government office on any given day, and there's 5 or 6 secretaries in every office that dress up, come to work, and do nothing. Most of them sit there and they could get a paycheck just for being employed. That is not an accomplishment. Saying that George Weah has overburdened taxpayers with employees that do not have a function is not an accomplishment. What we need to do is grow the private sector so people don't have to pretend to be working. We need to build human capacity so Liberians themselves can invest in themselves and create their own jobs. We're always waiting for some savior to come from somewhere to come give us jobs. When we have human beings, which are the bedrock, the foundation of any country, the foundation of any country's advancement. And if we do not invest in human beings and our citizens, they will not create the jobs. We cannot expect outsiders to create jobs for us. We have to build our economy ourselves. How do you do that? You develop the citizens. Putting people on government payroll when they have no function is not progress. It is not progress. It's backward, and it's part of the reason the country is sliding into the abyss of dysfunction. The government is top heavy, it's bottom heavy, it's too big and dysfunctional. So leadership would not look like hiring people that don't have functions and putting on payroll. Leadership would be downsizing the government, creating a viable private sector, helping create policies to develop a viable private sector so that people can go to work with dignity and actually be productive.
Thank you. Mr. Sharif, you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, the size of the Liberian government is not as big as many people would think. Liberia has a population of about 5 million people. There are only 72,000 people that are on government payroll. Fact. If you are looking at that, I don't think that is really overburdening any the taxpayers in any way. because you have to have an active military, you have to have an active police department, you have to have, and all of these numbers has to be in the thousands. You have to have the DEA, a functioning DEA. You have to have immigration. In Cape Mount alone, for example, there are over 48 crossings just in one county. That little county has about 48 crossings. Now, what will you say to those people that they are sitting doing nothing? A lot of the people that are working in the government today, it's not that they are not doing anything. Sometimes the conditions are not the best as they could be, but it's not that they are not really doing anything. In fact, if you come to Liberia, you'll be surprised to know that there are a lot of people who are actually trained in so many areas, not to what we always think that people are not trained in anyway. You go to the Bapolu Hospital that I was mentioning earlier, you said it's a building. For the benefit of this program, I will endeavor to go to that area in the next 2 weeks and take some pictures. Actually, people have been working there. Actually, there are beds. Actually, there are facilities in there. There are doctors. People have been assigned in that place. One of the problems that we had before this harmonization, doctors, people who went to medical school were making 700 US dollars per month. What did President Weir do? He made sure that doctor's salary was increased to $2,000. I don't think that is really bad. I don't think that is a group of people who are doing nothing. But that gave them the motivation to be able to do something where they feel motivated to go to work every day rather than brain drain this country and having people leave for other countries. In most parts of Africa, people are actually leaving, going to the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, for example. They are importing doctors in record numbers from Nigeria, for example, where they can go and make money that they will not make for the next 10 years in Nigeria. In Liberia, what is being done is to do something to actually keep these people working. Those things may sound like it's political, but those are people who actually went to school for many, many, many years to be able to actually achieve those things. Those are the things that we are talking about. But if you look at the total number of people that are working for the Liberian government, it's 72,000.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I meant to come in. Okay, but Carl, go first.
Let me just respond to that. I just want to correct some numbers here. There's only 298 doctors in Liberia. So when you talk about doctors, we really don't have enough doctors. Doctors don't always have to be employed by the government. The total number of doctors in the country as of January 2023 is 298 for a population of 5 million. That's ridiculous. But to correct one statistic here, or the idea that a 5 million population and 72,000 people is not a large government, Georgia has 10.8 million citizens, the state of Georgia. Georgia only has 68,000 people on government payroll, just to put things into proper perspective. And Georgia has a multi-billion-dollar economy. So we don't have the money or the resources for this massive government. The part of it is not even functioning properly. It doesn't mean that we don't need government employees. It means that we need a lean and efficient government. We need to have employees that work for the government who are doing something productive with their time at work, not 6 or 7 secretaries. I have been in Liberia. I lived in Liberia for 11 years. So it's not something I'm pulling out of thin air. It's something I have analyzed. It's something that I've taken. I mean, during the Ebola crisis, when they reduced the staff to 1/3, during Ebola, when everybody, 2/3 of the staff went home, and there was only 1/3 of the people going to work, guess what? All of a sudden, efficiency. And we were joking. We said this is actually how many people should be working in these offices, because nothing was slow. It was extremely efficient. There was not a bunch of loiterers standing around with nothing to do. It functioned better when you had 1/3 of the employees going to work. So it's something that people need to look at. The rest of the people who are competent, when you have a viable economy, they will find jobs in the country. Everyone does not have to work for government. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Adman. If you don't have anything to add, we have
I,
callers who
because
want to participate.
I do
Yeah,
have some. I'll be quick. I'll be quick.
yeah, so let me announce
Yeah.
the numbers for our
I yield
callers
my
to
time.
call and weigh in. 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403 #. We already have callers, but go ahead, Adman.
Look, Dennis, if you talk to the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf people, and this is what they've been saying, that a lot of okay, first the premise I will lay is, and I've always said it: every administration, any president does something because of the office of the president. The presidency, the executive power, gives you the authority to do things, right? But you talk to the Ellen Johnson people, they'll say, look, the CLG electricity and the WAPO, the West African Power Pool that they initiated, that's what Mr. Sheriff is talking about. When you talk, maybe the hydro, or who knows, having turbine under President Weah, they've brought online, that's increased distribution, that's increased, electricity a little bit, which is something, right? Because then the government would do something. But when you talk to the people in terms of the well-being of the people, in terms of social services, in terms of government efficiency, policy people, I've even heard some of the people in the CDC coalition, like what was the man who was way back in the Taylor government, part of the NPP. He said, look, in recent interviews, some of the people they're not working, they don't know that job, and this is the problem in this government. So to make it all sound as though things are really hunky-dory and rosy in Liberia under President Weah, I think, and like myself, yeah, every year I'm there. I was there for 6-7 years working in Liberia, in a not too far distant history. So it's not like we're just sitting here in America just pontificating and guessing. We have relatives there, we have friends there. We go there, we involved in Liberian affairs and know some of these numbers. So not to debunk everything you have said, but I think that you've made it sound a little rosier than the realities are on the ground.
And Dennis,
Thank you.
if I
I want to bring in a few callers. Yeah, you can be. Go ahead, Oliver, if you have a
yeah, I wanted to get to Mr. Sheriff too, because the statistics he was giving, I don't know. He said he's been in Liberia, I think, since 2017. That's about 5 going to 6 years. I don't know how he traveled around the 15 counties to see all of this kind of development he's talking about. I don't know where he's seeing electricity all over at, even though I know that, it's being, hyped up a bit. More electricity coming from the CLTSG line. But he talking about the roads. I don't know how many roads he traveled on to see how much construction of roads are taking place in Liberia, because those are all, I want to say, fallacious statements, because it's not true. Even you talk, Liberia has more than 72,000 employees, because if you listen to the GAC report the other day, they were indicting government for 692,000 employees. Some of them were not getting their pay on time. In fact, this government slashed the pay. People making $45 now. You talking about people making $300. I don't know where you getting your statistics from, or somebody is saying maybe you working in an agency or a ministry of government. Because you just went 5 years and you got all of those stats like that. Where
5
you
years,
coming
5
from?
year is a lot of time.
Well, oh no,
All
a lot of time I agree, but we Liberia, that society we live in, man, I think Mr. Sherry getting statistics maybe from the government line.
Dennis, let me comment 1 second. We do not inflate what we talk about, and I think I would really take offense to some of those things. If you talk to anyone, be it the Ministry of Finance or anyone of authority, they will tell you the total payroll of the government of Liberia does not exceed 72,000. somewhere in that ballpark. 600,000, that would be totally unaffordable for this country. It has never been that much.
So where did
Okay, I'm coming. Let's not talk over one another. I'm coming. You will have your chance.
Sorry, go ahead.
72,000. I don't think that is such a grandiose number, but 600,000, no, it is nowhere near even 100,000 people that work for the government of Liberia.
And they're making $300 a month.
I did not say that. I said when the harmonization took place, there were secretaries in one ministry. For example, I was just giving you an example. You will see a secretary making $300 here, but then you will see a secretary in another ministry that was making more than $1,000. And those are the salaries that were harmonized to make sure that everybody was making the same amount of money. I didn't say everybody was making $300. That's not what I said. Now, as far as electricity is concerned, if you go to any of the counties, be it Nimba County, be it Bone County, be it Cape Mount of recent, coming all the way to Bumming, if you have friends and relatives in those places, all along the highway, you can call them. I think Mr. Salif is a little familiar with that. He talked about the CSLG and also the West African Power Pool. These are all things that have been in the working. Some of the electricity is coming from Ivory Coast, and that's what you receive in, how do you call it, Nimba and Bone County. And then the one that is coming from Sierra Leone is received through Sierra Leone. But these are all things that have been, now, regardless of when it was done, government is continuity. We are not here to denigrate or talk about who didn't do what, but we are talking about what has happened today. What is happening today? Because some people will actually get into government and not do any of those things. Now, are you telling me that no roads are being paved or constructed even in and around Monrovia? There are more access roads. Maybe Mr. Salif can tell you about that. There are more access roads in Monrovia than you can ever imagine. You need to come and take a look. You go to Nimba. I mean, these are roads that I have seen. Growing up, I partly grew up up there. The road from Ganta to Saniquete was a dusty road. Today is a paved road. You go to Saclay. All of those roads are being paved today. Those are the things that I'm talking. These are factual pictures that I'm not just presenting a rosy picture. And I really think it's that.
Thank you. Let me take a few callers here. We have like 10 of them already lined up. Callers, please be as brief as possible, 1 minute max. Let's start with Mr. Houston Brooks.
Yes. Hello, my brother, Dennis Jar, and greetings to everybody on the panelists. The topic of the show today is what Liberians should look for in selecting the next person. So to that point, I would say, looking at the candidates we have available, I think Mr. Gonglo is a more viable candidate. However, we all know that he does not possess the political weaponry and the funding, to position himself as the best candidate. So it's, again, what I will come to, Liberia is hopeless. Nothing good is going to come. And the caution I'm going to throw to the wind is that the opposition is not doing enough on the ground to ensure victory. You yourself just played the video clip from Monrovia, what's happening now, as we are gear up for his renomination. We are campaigning. He's campaigning. The posters are all over the city. What is the opposition doing about it? What are they saying about it? Is it time to campaign? Will they put their poster up? Will the government allow that? So my fear is we are not doing enough to ensure victory, and I will not be surprised if President Weah somehow come out victorious again in 2023. So I say that's my 2 cents to the show. You. I get off the phone and I will continue to follow.
Thank you so much, Houston. Let me go to Mr. Aliyu Kamara, a very staunch GNB supporter. Mr. Aliyu.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. Hey, you asked two questions before I actually talk anything. The first thing is where are the voters? I can assure you, voters are right there. The next question you ask is who they're looking for, what should they look for. Well, once you pick up your ballot, then it's just look for Joe Buckeye. That's just as simple as that. But look, somebody said that from the beginning of this country, politicians have never had the country interest at heart. They come for their own personal aggrandizement, and which is true, because from 1822 or 1820, whatever you want to quote it, the first time a Liberian ever had any stake in their own country was 1985. People in Grand Judah voted. People in Lofa County voted. That was the first time I seen my old man vote. He was confused. Prior to that, he had to be from Montserrat County somewhere in order to even be recognized. We have proper representation under Charles Phillip. Every county had people representing them. We had it on the elected assembly. Everybody was elected from the various counties. So that is the fact. The fact is, it started in 1985 with the indigenous. Somebody also said that Liberia is not decentralized. That is a fact. Liberia is not decentralized. A decentralized community is a place that generates their own revenue and determine their own destiny. If central government will collect revenue from Nimba County, take it to Monrovia, and then determine what goes back to Nimba County, how can that be considered a decentralization? So Liberia is still not decentralized until the counties can determine their own fate, etc., etc. Liberia is not decentralized. I'll leave you with this, Dennis. I think you guys are working on a very a fine line of thread, and we make it seem like it's us in the diaspora who knows what it means to vote, who knows what it means to select a proper candidate. If this stuff pisses the Liberian people off, and I'm not saying anything is going wrong here. I think this is the best thing. In fact, this is the best channel on social media. But the truth is, the Liberian people do get pissed off when they think that we think we know better than them, and that sometimes they just rebel against us and put for a guy like just we are. Thank you. I'm watching.
Thank you. When you say the Liberian people, I'm a Liberian too, so I don't know who. But let me go to our next caller here. That's Thomas Kane. All right, we'll see. Thomas, you're alive. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, Dennis. I have a question, but I just wanted to make a comment on the Stanton Waterspoon issue that you discussed earlier.
Yeah, the impact.
So you were asking a question on whether they will have impact on the way we deal with corruption back home. What I have seen mostly on Facebook is people in the ruling government saying that, oh, this guy was corrupt himself and he was putting more on us. So it's more like, I mean, he shouldn't have even been talking about corruption in Liberia because himself was corrupt. So I think they're going to do it more because there's no one talking about it. And this is one of the things about this whole issue with Stanton, because over the past few years, with the issue of technology and with the issue of the internet, we have all these media institutions like FOI, like Spoon Network and all of that coming up from the diaspora who have the ability to be able to hold people to account in Liberia beyond what the local journalists can do because of many factors like the fear of their lives and all of that. The media doesn't have money, the government can easily buy them. So it is that state that was improving and bringing attention to Liberia. So when Stanton got involved in this thing, it really turns that around. And anyone coming from the diaspora, now the question would be, your check behind these people before we even listen to them. But the question I wanted to ask is that in the entire CDC government, there is no one who speaks to unemployment with authority. Even the finance minister, Samuel Twist, had gone on the local radio station in Liberia and they asked him about unemployment. He said Liberia had no system in place to be able to track unemployment or employment rate. The Labour Ministry has not done that. The way we used to do it was the labor force survey and some of the studies that we used to do in the past. All of those have now been done over the past 4 years. So to hear Mr. Sherry saying with confidence simply because he's on the ground that more people have been put to work than before, I really want him to share with us the evidence that he's relying on to be able to make that claim about unemployment in Liberia. Not simply because he's there or he has gotten on a car and wants to keep buying a timber. But I really want him to get up to study that data that he's relying on to say that unemployment or more people have been put to work over the past 5 years than before. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sharif. Mark that down. Let me call on Mr. Kalebo Gonglo. I know he's going to talk about statistics, some numbers. Gonglo, go ahead, sir.
Yes, that's true, Dennis. I wanted to talk, just quickly on a few things. First is a question of the unemployment. I think I posted a few links on your page. Unemployment, for me, that's my argument usually in developing economy is unemployment should not be the issue. Because countries like Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, or most countries in Africa, except probably South Africa, or maybe countries in North Africa or something like that, unemployment should not be the issue because our economy is not as structured as economies of the developed world. Like here in the U.S., where we live, if you go unemployed, you have safety nets. You can go apply for unemployment or social. It will give you it gives you food stamp or cash assistance or something. Some people even get rent assistance. You don't have that in Liberia. So when you look at, that's why in most developing economies, you have undergoing economy like, the Yana boys. That's the business of slum developing all around. Because there is no safety net and people must survive, so they have to do everything to survive. And in labor statistics, labor statistics is measuring economic activities. And there are different criteria to measure. They were actually like, in the last 7 days, have you done any work that you earn, that you got paid, you earn, at least $1. They measure just by that you earn even just $1 in the last 7 days. As you work for like an hour or so. So if you say, yes, you done something that you earn money, they will consider you as very employed, and there are other criteria that may ask you in the last 3 months or in the last, so they will ask different measure and they're measuring economic activities. And those who are in the economically active population, like those who are of working age, they can afford to not do anything to earn some money. And when you do labor force survey in developing countries, unemployment rate is always lower. When we did that in Liberia, when I was at Ministry of Labor, they were interested to know that Liberia unemployment rate was 3.7%. Now it's around, it has increased, it's 4.01%, it has increased. So that is, so it's not really the issue. The issue should be if we have, and that unemployment rate is low because what we call the vulnerable unemployment, the vulnerable employment, those who are selling for themselves, selling water in the wheelbarrow, do kobosha, they're working for themselves. That is a large chunk of the employed people in the country. That group, they don't pay taxes. When they get sick, they don't earn income. In any country, when your employment population constitutes majority of that group, then you are in crisis. And that's the case in Liberia. That's the case in many African countries. And that's why, if you want to talk on the politics but we should talk on the politics of those it comes of what people are doing, not those who are not working.
Thank you.
It's usually low in developing countries.
Thank you, Mr. Gonglo. Callers, please be very brief. We got more and more callers. I have 8 callers left. Jimmy, 1 minute, please.
Okay, again, John, I gotta commend you. You are staying on topic. These are the kind of discussions we need to have so that people are able to analyze. We have to show our people how to be critical thinkers, and only with analytics like this will they learn how to develop critical thinking. The question is, what kind of person we need? What kind of president or leadership we need? We need someone who will optimize the country's resources. What I mean by that, someone who will look at our natural resources and reduce the theft and the corruption that surrounds it. It will not allow foreigners to mine our resources,
take them away, and we see nothing about it. We need someone who will grow efficiently and build skills of our people. If you go around any ministry, you go around any main business, the Lone Star or the what, they are foreign engineers, no local librarians. I went to LEC the other day, there were Ghanaians there. Where we used to manage that whole place was out with 90% Liberians. We have our country being taken over by foreign expertise because the person at the head is afraid to bring Liberian expertise closer to secure his job. We need somebody who will tap into our youth and demographic. That's where we have the bulk of our people. Are they growing them? Are they nurturing their skills? We see them running around Monrovia, boys, instead of moving them toward carpenters, masons, engineers, and doctors. That's the kind of person we need. Someone who will build the youth, because tomorrow is what the youth will build. And if we're not building them today, that means we're killing tomorrow. We need someone who will optimize our productivity. Make better use of the resources. We have it. We're not using it. That's what I look at we need.
Thank you, Jimmy. Let me bring on Hassan. Hassan, quickly, 1 minute, please.
Yeah, welcome, Jimmy, and great show tonight.
Thank you.
I just got a couple of points that I have to make. If Mr. Sherry is going to come on the show and continuously inform our people about what version of Liberia, what's happening in Liberia, people should be able to push back as hard as they can, because what he says, everything he says, whatever propaganda he says on the show, right? Yes, repeat it. And you listen to the people on KSC, and you listen to FOL, and talking to shit better. So those things so any little information that will come on the show, or that will come on the show and stuff like that should be properly checked and stuff like that. When he's talking about lights and electricity all around like we are in the world being built and all those things and stuff like that, people should actually push back and challenge it. And as far as what the Liberia needs, we already know what Liberia needs. You need somebody like Alexander Cummings. That's the only way we can be able to build, because you know how to manage things and stuff like that. And I agree with Cisco, everything she said, that our leaders don't have nobody in our history to reference that inspires them and stuff. And we see the American, we watch people in America do, American politicians do that a lot. The reference George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Jefferson, and stuff like that in terms of when they're facing crisis and stuff. So great show tonight, and thank you for the show tonight.
Thank you. Mr. G.S. Camon, you're live.
Yeah, great, sir, and thank you so much again for the discussion. These are the things that would do for us that will help our country.
Thank you.
You are doing a great job, and I thank you. You want to know from the nation. So thank you to the guys. About my problem here, all the callers have made my point. Mila Ali made my point, and then the other guy there. There are little things that
okay.
People come out and say dishonest statement and get to fool the Liberian people, or maybe their relative or friends in the government, so they get to what they say and give misinformation to the people there, to our public. So then, however, even though you try to do well, but sometimes people kind of give you kind of wrong information to our people. Not allow them to shoot people.
Mr. Camon, you can say it wrong until you have a contrary information, but so let people say.
Okay. My information is they could say for the night what it boosted off. They like it's store now. Only in the insurance they can talk about it. More than the store, it's not going nowhere. They just put pull on and put wire on it now. No community, I would say, from the single village community all the way now. Only the right now, 200 are current. When people in the area go there. All the whole left side, no current there. But current start from the ground charge, go in there, start right there. So along the road, they want to be talking current now. In Ghana, they're the same thing. We call people, we call friends, we call family. We complain, we say the same thing, nothing. Right now, the Washington current, right now.
Thank you, GS.
I talk to somebody. So and like if you comparing America with Liberia, like Mr. Colibor said, he said, there's a system that we all know. Even if the rock government either give you food stamp or they give you cattle system, the older people that get a rent assistance and all the kinds of things. The women and children that gave them something. But Liberia, nothing there. The only person I ask somebody, scratch car. I make it business, I tell them scratch car, or they buy the water and put ice on it and sell it. So those are not employment.
Thank you.
Survival mode, not a lot of people in.
I know.
So people come and start saying anything, you're not allowed them to say. You're vacant.
No, man.
Exactly.
The people, everybody got their point of view. We shouldn't stop them. But thank you very much, Mr. Kamu. Let's
thank God for who put some a checkpoint there. I like the women that always get a good checkpoint.
Thank you.
Then they will come back to struggle to fight. So thank you again.
Thank you.
This show is good. Continue this, and we'll continue listening.
Thank you. Let me bring in Mr. Tadma. Tadma, you're live.
Yeah, Dennis, thank you so much. And I want to thank your panelists. I listened to them very carefully, and everybody put the points. I mean, it's one thing we Liberians, we sit behind, we sit in the despair, and then we just criticize everything. So that he's caught us.
Man, we don't criticize everything, man.
They forget that the present government has just been in there for 5 years. Before this government, we have a government that was there for 12 years. You talking about electricity? So why the electricity wasn't there for the past 12 years and this present government came and managed it? You see, we just let it criticize. We let it criticize and we forget. So if one government is there, if we are in sync with that government, then everything is okay. But when the next person comes, we criticize. The Ellen Johnson government was there for 12 years. What was the electricity? I just said, all these callers are saying, but what is life? What was the electricity? What was the life? 12 years. 12 consecutive years. So why you didn't ask the Ellen government what was it like? So we got to be objective. You see, I'm not a physician, but when sometimes you listen to this call, everything that happening in Liberia is so bad. There's nothing good. Oh, things are hard. Come on. We understand things are hard all over the world. Not only in Liberia, but when there's something being done, there are some positive things done in our country. And let us give the present government of credit for that. Even though they are not 100%, they are not meeting up to our expectations, but they are doing well.
Right.
But let me get back to your question.
Hey, man, quickly now.
Our next president. I think the Liberian people, we all got to, Madame Cole said, one thing we put everything on the presidency. Everything is on the presidency. Like how your callers get the blame the purpose. But one point she made, and I real like the idea to stress. We elect legislatures. These people, the president is accountable to them. But if these people are not properly working, and then everything the president says go, then you blame the people that are supposed to represent that constituency. You see, everything is not on the president alone. Understand there are three branches of government.
Thank you, Tadma. Let me take my last caller here for the night. That's
all right, Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joe Cassell Moyo. Joe, go ahead.
Yes, sir. It's a good program. I'm enjoying it. I think Carl made some pretty good points. But we also have to understand that Mr. Sharif perhaps has a different definition of development. He believes that, you build some infrastructure, that's good enough. I don't think he puts that much emphasis on human capital, developing the human being itself to function within the to be functional and productive. And that's where I believe, to answer your question, That's what Mr. Weir has been lacking. Because if you grab Liberian that's not working for government and ask them what sort of changes they've seen in their life, if there's been any meaningful change in their life since we are into power, I bet a majority of them will say no. The Maasai Ikina, they got a thing, in the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty. And that's the problem that been with Liberia even before we are. If you got 300 miles of seafront, there's opportunity for fisheries, for tourism. You got the largest virgin forest in West Africa. And you just let it stay there. The only when you think forest, you think, oh, well, let's go give some sort of concession to through the forestry department to cut down trees. Other people see forestry, and what comes to mind? Again, ecotourism, those sort of things. That's how you build your economy. You can't build you can't have 65% of your budget being used to pay people. Recurrent expenses. You don't grow an economy like that. There should be an emphasis also by the Liberian government in this in developing entrepreneurship. You see a Liberian got a business, and that business seems to, be able to scale, just like they do in the United States. The government can go and say, look, we see this business, we like what you're doing, we want you to scale, we'll give you money to scale, we'll guarantee bank loans for you to scale, because guess what? When that business scales, there's more money going in government coffers in terms of taxes.
Yeah.
People that employ, they'll be paying taxes too. In the United States, we have a Microsoft, we have GM, all those. What made all those companies what they are is the U.S. government. They saw an opportunity. They don't give the same richest man in the world, Steve Jobs and all, Apple and all. The American government took stake in all those companies. I think you all that have been here for a while, you heard too big to fail during the last crisis. Where the American government said, no, this company they can't go down. We'll go ahead. And those are some of the small things that the government in Liberia need to start doing.
Thank you, Joe.
Once you do that, you will get more people off the payroll, and there will be more productive citizens within society. And those same people that in the private sector, they will be developing businesses, and hiring people. That's how you grow your economy.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
80% of our economy now is being dominated by foreigners. In Nigeria, 80% of their economy is being dominated by Nigerians. So you can't take everything and put it on the government also. Liberians, let's face it, we don't have entrepreneur mind.
Right. Maybe the environment is not that. But Joe, we gotta go.
So yeah, that's my contribution.
Appreciate it.
As usual, you did a pretty good job.
Thank you so much for calling and being a very loyal supporter. All right, ladies and gentlemen, time is so fast spent. I know Mr. Sheriff in Monrovia there is a long time, but Mr. Sheriff, some of these things were directed at you. So quick response, yes. Call us, and then we go into our avatar session to conclude the night.
But very, very quickly, I think some of the issues I was addressing, I think it was totally misunderstood by many. What I said here, out of a population, an estimated population of 5 million people, only 72,000 work for the government. Now, if you put that into percentage at 5 million, that would be 0.018%.
And can we afford to pay them? Do we have the resources to pay them? I think that's where the question is.
If we can have, government is current on salaries, as far as I know.
Deacon hold to cover hole. You are actually Deacon hold to cover hole.
Dennis, if we are going to go into the economic aspect of that, even the Federal Reserve does have the capacity to print money in order to pay off. But that's not what we are going into. But let's stick to the show here tonight because I can adequately handle that. Unemployment. I think I understand what unemployment is, but I was not addressing unemployment. I was only giving a specific figures about how many people actually work for the government. And if you take it at 5 million, that number is actually only 1.44% of the people in this country that are working for government. I don't think that is overly extending the government. Now, as far as unemployment is concerned, I cannot sit here and tell you I have numbers on unemployment in Liberia. No, if I tell you that, then that would be disingenuous of me, because unemployment itself is a very complicated issue that most people really find it hard to understand. Because if you are unemployed and the day you stop looking for a job, you are no longer considered unemployed. According to what? BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is the department in the United States that tracks down unemployment. Okay, but that is actually the economic definition of unemployment. Is people, number of people or percentage of people who are no longer in the labor force and actively what? Looking for work. So if you are no longer in the labor force and you are no longer looking for work, you are no longer considered unemployed. So let's not go into that. But what I was giving here, I was simply giving a number: 72,000 people work for the Liberian government. But if you put that in percentage, at 5 million, it's only 1.44%. Now, if even you were to take the population for another argument's sake at 4 million, it would still be 1.8%, which is what? Less than 2% of the people in this country actually work for government. That's basically what I was saying. So I don't know what are the numbers that I'm inflating or I'm creating a rosier picture, but I can tell you one thing. The African situation or the Liberian situation, it's a simplistic picturesque of a complicated reality that people sometimes just don't understand until you have to really see it up close and personal. Yes, there are situations where people are hurting, people are having issues, but that is everywhere. I live in New York, and I know how many people live in abandoned buildings, but that's not the point. Everywhere you go, those situations are always there. Sometimes people actually overly exaggerate what their real situation is.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you also, everybody, very much tonight. We are going over our time, but we can't leave without the Tabata session because our viewers will be calling for it. So let's go into a Tabata session. Tabata in Southeastern or the Kru speaking language means nonsense. Is there any Tabata for the week that you've seen? Mr. Sharif, I will start with you because you are new. You're Tabata of the week. All right, let Mr. Salif show you what Tabata is.
With that.
Mr. Salif, what's your Tabata of the week?
Well, it has to be Mr. Senator Prince Johnson and CDC government. So the Johnson is at it again because it's the election cycle, and that's why he does best. He tries to position himself to be the kingmaker, and the CDC is not having any of it. Well, first of all,
the CDC cup full.
Exactly. So Senator Johnson has relinquished political leadership of his political party. So he's no longer the standard bearer. He's not running this time around, but he's still essentially negotiating as though he was the political leader still of this party, and really bringing the fight to CDC's door and not taking the bait, whatever they're offering him, because he has admitted in several media appearances that's a high-power delegation from the CDC and the ruling government, including former Minister McGill and others, current Morocco, the mayor, want to see him because he basically threatened and said, look, Nima County will not go for George Weah this time around. As if Nima County vote is just one vote he has he can decide who to cast it for, right? And so, you all may have followed that negotiation went on, but then there are this tit for tat, back and forth. He's done VOA interviews. He's done some recent media interviews. So I think even just today, he's saying that they're threatening his life. I think this is all about money, At the end of the day, I think this is complete tabata.
You want the price to go up, right? So, Dropo, what's your tabata of the week?
Thank you so much. Well, my tabata, but firstly, before I go to my tabata, I want to thank Brother Sharif, Ahmed B. Sharif. I think we got two Ahmed B. Sharif and Ahmed Salif. So it was kind of, but aside from that, Brother Sharif, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and for really explaining what is obtaining on the ground that you are seeing from your vantage point.
You put down your closing. Yeah. Let's go to the tabata.
Okay. I will come back to Mr. Sharif later on.
Yeah.
But my tabata was, I think, a couple of days ago, President Weah was there a lunch with 3 comedians? I don't know if any of you saw that video. He was sitting with 3 guys eating from a little bowl and, just talking about the comedy world and that he kind of fits into that world and all that, his celebrity and all that. It was comical because, President Weah, I know we all know that he comes from a downtrodden part of the country, a slum community. So I was thinking, instead of those comedians going to his house, I was thinking that Mr. Weah would have gone to, Clarendon or wherever he grew up on the island, go, find maybe some of his old pals, people he grew up with, and people who he ate with when he was growing up. I used to have, a conversation over, breadfruit or whatever they ate while he was growing up. So that would have really sent home, the actual picture of his whole story of from rag to riches. So I thought that was, very hilarious and also a tabata.
Why? Because you didn't go to West Point or Clarendon to do that? Anyway, let me go to call for tabata of the week. I know you missed this part.
Yeah, so there's so many. The U.S. Embassy put out a public service announcement about Roberts International Airport failing the safety audit, basically warning travelers about the dangers of flying into Roberts International Airport. And this is ridiculous. A government that cannot even manage an airport, a state-owned airport, is a failed government. It's a failed situation. It is absolutely humiliating for the country. If you cannot keep an airport maintained, you cannot build your economy. You can't do anything. This is, for me, the greatest blight on the country and a glaring example of the rampant incompetence and low expectations of the leadership of the country. There are people, Liberia, brain drain or no brain drain, there are people that can manage that airport. This is ridiculous. Stop this patriotism and patronizing, putting your friends into shoes that are too big for them, and stop humiliating the country. That's the tabata for me right now.
Thank you so much. Let me come in before Oliver. Oliver, prepare for your tabata. My tabata of the week is the speech writers for the president that made the president look so bad by writing for him a 3-hour-plus speech, even though somebody said, well, if the reading can improve a little bit, maybe through a teleprompter, that could be done in 1 hour. But still, the speech was too long for the president, and the words that were put there for him to read did not just make sense. You should write a speech based on how the person talks or how he delivers. You can put words in his mouth that he had never seen or never said before. So the speech writers for the president, big Tabata for me. Mr. Hogarth, what's your Tabata of the week? If you can unmute, please.
Listening to Senator Prince Johnson today, stating that an assassination plot he believes has been instituted against him. And he was trying to say that he's a man of peace. And he tried to compare the situation with the Samuel Doe time when they had the infamous Tele, one of the fighters from Doe, who was accused of killings at the airfield, Sincor, and also at the Lutheran Church.
Koji is the new Tele.
Yeah, Tele. He tried to, he said Koji is the new Tele. But in fact, nobody in Liberia was Tele. So, but
so that's
I was listening to him, and he was stating that there's no way the MDR will endorse the candidacy of Mr. Weah come he's looking for the second term. So there's no way that they will endorse him. And in fact, he's in conversation with the Unity Party and Alexander.
So what's your Tabata of the week?
Yeah, so my Tabata is Prince Johnson is unpredictable. The gun that liberates should not rule. So when he starts to come out like that, I think people need to be concerned. And if anybody is hatching any plot that he says, I think people need to be careful.
Thank you. Mr. Sharif, your Tabata of the week.
I think I'm going to take a pass. I'm not very good at
All right. Our viewers are talking. Noah Brown said, "My Tabata is when when is the country going to get a diaspora program to bring back the brain lost like Ghana? The diaspora need to go home." Emmanuel Brown said, "My Tabata this week is seeing Representative Yaga Koluba of the ANC shouting on behalf of the Unity Party in the joint chambers of the Liberian Senate during the SONA. That was a pure Tabata." No, that happens all the time. So they were shouting CDC and he was shouting Unity Party. I thought that was the best part of the. Elvis Morris said, "My Tabata is PYJ talking about the death of the editors after 2 years, now that the government isn't dealing with him." If we will stay on Prince Johnson, Houston Brooks, my Tabata of the week is we are taking up all the spaces on the light poles and billboards, putting up his posters, leaving no space for the opposition, and the opposition, are doing nothing about it. I think the other Tabata of Prince Johnson is he said he went to the president's house and saw the turnover notes, as if the president Salif's house, as if you have the turnover notes on the table that any visitor could just go there and look at it. And then he asked for it.
He said, showed it to him.
Yeah, when he asked for it, he said, "Oh, can I take it?" He said, "No, I'm not your president now. Go to the current president." Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Let me get your closing, at least for 48 seconds each. Let's get your closing comments.
Well, people got to share the fun.
No, I mean the Prince Johnson, Madam Sharif, you know, that's the typical Ellen right there. Another president will go to the new one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but okay. So you go ahead now with your closing, Mr. Dupu.
Yeah, Dennis, thank you again for such an informative discussion. I want to thank you for what you do on daily, weekly basis. I mean, it's highly commendable. A lot of people have called me, friends who listen to the show, who sometimes I even share the show with. They highly rate the show. and I think you have some of the best minds on the show. But I was, talking about Brother Sharif, meeting him for the first time. I was highly impressed, by his articulation. I know he got some pushback here and there. But sometimes, too, I think we have to protect each other. Sometimes, you get all these colors and, all these insinuations and stuff like that. We can't stop that. But as co-panelists, too, we have to also be mindful sometimes, even if somebody has just digressed a little bit, there's certain way you can say it, just not to, create any kind of hard feelings. But aside from that, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank my fellow colleagues for, sharing this evening with all of us, with our listeners, the people watching the show, and Liberian people. I think our country's future, uh, this 2023 election will be a watershed elections. It will really kind of, set the stage if our country will make that leap that we all wanted to make, or it will still, kind of retrogress. And I believe that, the ruling party and the opposition have a big role to play in all of this. The Liberian people, the voters, the political consciousness, and all that we need to see to make sure we elect people with the highest integrity, because that is totally lacking in our country. Most of the time, people come to public office just to satisfy their personal egos, their bottom line, and just to make a show of the office. And especially in the legislature that we talked about, we just hope that our people will not put their stomach before their voice or their future. They will really see these people for their true selves, and they will make the right decisions for their future. So thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody. God bless Liberia.
Thank you. Mr. Sharif.
Well, once again, I'd like to thank my dear friend and brother Dennis for bringing me on this show. We had talked about it several months ago, but I have not been able to actually do it. And somehow he called me by mistake yesterday, thinking that he was actually calling, I believe, you. So we started a conversation. I said, hey, but, we had talked about this thing before. Maybe now we can, really do something. And then within a short notice, which was just yesterday, this evening, he gave me a topic for us to discuss. I think it was around this evening, right? You gave me the topic. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for bringing me among such a fine folks, gentlemen, and a lady. It's a pleasure sitting in with you all. It's a learning experience for me. We are all here to share our thoughts on what we believe. It's not in any way to inflate anything that we think that we want to inflate. Sometimes what I know may vary from what you may think, or may vary from what you may know. But at some point, we will all get to understand each other and begin to know some of the things that we know. I think it was really a learning experience for me from you all. I learned a lot, and I hope to continue to learn from you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And let the people that are watching know that the picture behind you is just a virtual background before they think
it is
you're out in Liberia and then you're making all the government money.
But I told him earlier, I said, thanks to you. You brought me.
Because it looks like you're a bourgeois there in Liberia. Carl, your closing, please.
Yeah, it was my pleasure to be back again. And great to be with all the great panelists. I appreciate the time you all took to come out and express your thoughts and have. I think this discussion was very fruitful. I wish you had talked a little more tough. The tradition of this show is that we're supposed to be tough talking.
Yeah,
You
you
were
guys are not tough.
perfect gentleman. You know, I don't know who is it that gets chocolate. So I don't know, Mr. Cooney or who, but we missed the fire today a little bit. But I appreciate all of you, and I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sam Wallow always accusing me. I know you say I'm what? This night he said he said Sam Wallow got new name for me every day. The last one is Mr. Salif, your closing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to re-echo the good sentiments, Mr. Brother Sheriff. You know, I think you're a big brother. We are from the Western Cluster. I salute you for. I like to hear Western Cluster. I salute you for coming. I know what it takes. You know, when I was over there, sometimes to try to join media, make media appearances on the side while you're in Liberia is a big challenge. But I think your testament. It's a testament to your conversation about electricity availability in the country. I'm sure you're enjoying that. So yeah, thank you for your contribution. This election to me is an inflection point, very crucial for Liberia. Um, you know, for our country, the direction of the country and our people. We hope that the people have an opportunity to receive the right information about the various candidates, and that these candidates will all have at least something close to an equal playing field where they can present a platform truly, and maybe create opportunities where public intellectuals and media folks and civil society folks can engage them in debates. You know, I believe we should establish a national debate commission of some sort to really hold political aspirants accountable and hear their messages and put them in our vernacular, in a Liberian English, so that people really understand what these people are saying, what they say they would do. Do they have these four things I talk about: the political skills, the management ability to form teams, to deliver for the Liberian people? Are they persuasive enough? Can they represent us internationally? Do they have the strength to engage with political enemies, even who are Liberians? Liberians who may not be partisan, but who are competent, qualified Liberians, both in Liberia and outside of the country. Just bring people together to work to build a country for the good of the country, for the people. And of course, the temperament, because once you're the leader in our African tradition, you are the father, you are the mother of the nation. People really have to recognize that it's not enmity just because somebody is not a sedition or unity partisan and so on. Therefore, now they're your enemy. You just all working toward one goal from different directions. So I appreciate the conversation, the opportunity to engage in civic exchanges here.
Thank you. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock, join us for the literary hour with Dr. K. Moses Nabwe and the scholar Jackie Sire. The topic, Almost Settled, the Liberian Saga of Paradise Lost. Then at 8 o'clock is debate night. That's Friday night debate with people we'll have a Gonglo representative or supporter, a Cummins supporter, a Buckeye supporter, we are supporter, and of course, an independent. And we're going to be discussing the President's State of the Nation address and the various responses. We got one from the Unity Party, the CPP, the Liberty Party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, the MDR, that's Prince Johnson's party, and the student-based Student Unification Party, all giving their responses to the State of the Nation address, and we're going to be here tomorrow night to debate it. Then on Saturday, the History Channel with presenter Carl Famule will be here to discuss Pan-Africanism Manifested. Carl and Jabari will be the presenter, and of course, I'll be here to hold things down. Well, Mr. Oliver, you're closing, and then you close us tonight. Unmute, please.
Sorry, it was great sitting with all these great people, and I know one thing I forgot to mention, Dennis and the rest of the panelists. I'm getting afraid Because I know my country, since the discovery, like the security forces informed us of the discovery of a cache or a container of arms at the free port of Monrovia. Arms were shown at the headquarters of the Liberian National Police. They had the experts there telling what each of these guns could do. But then it will surprise you to know that since then we hearing nothing. I don't know if Mr. Sherry hearing something else since he's on the ground, but we're hearing nothing about the arms. And listening to Prince Johnson today, he said one of the things his sources informed him of was that they could try, to plot something against him and have pay people to come and be false witnesses and whatnot. So, knowing our history, don't be surprised when election coming around. Yeah, one day that so politician XYZ has been connected to the arms that were bought in the country and so and so. I mean, anything can happen. So I was thinking about that seriously. But then I think we had a wonderful discussion. It was in place, even though I know sometimes when we heard some information, some figures coming out, it caused an alarm. But all in all, I think it was fair enough. Everybody comes from a different side, even though some of us are neutral, but everyone comes from a different side and has their own perception about things. So I'd like to thank all of you for coming. Uh, look forward to meeting all of you or some of you on next Thursday for another edition of Talk Talking here on Focus on Liberia. So until we meet again, a pleasant night. And my name is Raymond Oliver Hoggett. I was sitting along with Dennis Jar. And God willing, we'll see you next Thursday. Good night.
We all are